The church adopts a prophesized man born from a vampire and an immortal sorceress. Due to his conflicting nature and the life he'd been taught, the hybrid spares the life of a dangerous woman, only for her to lead him further into darkness. In a secluded cave, the immortal sorceress Circe gives birth to her child, who's prophesied to kill his own father, the vampire Vladislas. She holds a vampire-slaying dagger to kill her son to prevent this. But before she can end him, crusaders rush into the cave. The sorceress fights back but gets impaled by one of the monks. The crusaders take the child and deliver it to the church. There, they cut his claws and use holy potions to mend his face. They raise him into becoming a warrior for the Order of the Knights of the Dragon, tasked to slay the ancient abominations. Decades later, after slaying countless demons and pagan temples, he reaches the castle where his true father, Prince Vladislas, resides. Still unaware of his origin, the knight Radu is accompanied by the monk Marius and a couple of other knights. They dismount in a forest where the castle loomed, aiming to retrieve an artifact called the Bloodstone. Inside the castle, Vladislas feeds on a woman as Circe watches. Out of sight, the knights creep into the castle and confront the vampire, demanding the artifact. Vladislas claims it's a gift to him before clashing with the knights. Armed with a vampire-slaying sword, Radu trades blows with the prince. Impressed by his skill, Vladislas asks the knight's name. Radu answers and the vampire flees, declaring that this is not their fight yet. As Marius obtains the Bloodstone, Circe asks Radu about his family, but the knight doesn't know. While the knight is confused, she reveals that he is a stolen child and his true parents are her and Vladislas. She tempts him with his rightful power and explains that he was stolen from them to fulfill the prophecy. Radu demands the truth from Marius, but the monk knows nothing. Circe then warns him that he'll be cursed forever if he ends his father, then disappears. The monk urges him to speak to the church's patriarchs about his birth, and Radu orders the cave to be cleansed with holy water. As they make their way out of the castle, Radu senses other people around. This leads them to discovering a woman named Elena who begs them to spare her child, Stefan. She admits that Vladislas took her for his satisfactions and she bore him a son, but he never drank her blood. She adds that Vladislas was waiting for Stefan to grow into an adult before turning him. Learning this, Marius insists on slaying the two, but Radu inspects the woman for bites first. Despite the monk's insistence, Radu decides to save them. Outside, they burn the bodies of the fallen, but discover that the vampire took their horses. Because of this, Radu decides to camp for the night so they can travel by day. While resting, Helena thanks the knight and places his hand on her leg as a gesture of her affection. Radu leads her to a nearby cave, but instead helps her to get comfortable to sleep. At sunrise, Stefan cries as his eyes hurt. Radu comforts him, understanding that his half-brother isn't used to sunlight yet. He assures him that he has nothing to fear as the sun is the most powerful being in the world. Marius corrects him that God is the most powerful being in the world, but the knight tells him not to affect the boy with dogma. Marius again insists they end the mother, but Radu argues that she wasn't bitten. The monk surrenders and asks the knight to release him from his service, but Radu declines, reasoning that the monk is his only friend and conscience. The monk debates that he's tired of the darker aspects of the church and thinks Radu is doing something worse by sparing them. The knight concedes and allows him to leave on good terms. Radu checks on Helena and finds that she is sensitive to the sun. They decide to travel at sunset, and as they did, Radu places his faith on her humanity yet fears that God has already forsaken them. In the evening, the group camps near another cave and Helena tells the knight that he is her guardian angel. She sees fear in the knight's eyes and asks how she can prove her humanity, so she seduces Radu in an attempt to bond with him. Stefan watches the two be intimate, but Radu quickly notices a wound on Helena and recoils. He aims his sword at her and declares her a spawn of Vladislas. Stefan springs up and brandishes another sword, but the knight quickly calms himself and the lad. Helena bargains that she's still human, but Radu says her humanity will fade. To give her a chance, he offers her a drink from the Bloodstone, which will provide an infinite supply of blood to relieve her hunger. This seems to work, though the woman still needs to sleep during the day. This allows Radu to grow closer with his brother. One day, Stefan suggests that Radu slay his mother since she's still turning into a vampire. Surprised, the knight hesitates and decides to leave it to chance. The group keeps traveling at night and camp near dawn. Radu also continues feeding Helena with the bloodstone, and one night, the woman tempts him to drink from it, saying it belonged to his father, thus it's his birthright. Falling into the temptation, he drinks and falls to his knees in awe. With the knight now vulnerable, Helena bares her fangs, bites him and taints him with her blood, turning him into a vampire. Suddenly, Vladislas appears and yanks Helena off, declaring that she, Stefan, and the bloodstone belong to him. The vampire then tells Radu that without a master, he will perish. With that, he disappears with Helena, Stefan, and the vampire-slaying sword. Alone and tainted, Radu travels into the night and manages to find Marius. He approaches the monk and explains his condition, begging the monk to stake him on the ground and let the sun destroy him. Marius reluctantly agrees and prepares to stab the vampire. As his friend prepares to end him, Radu asks for forgiveness and the monk does so as well, saying he shouldn't have left. He then impales the man and says a prayer for Radu. Suddenly, a spear stabs the monk in the back, revealing Circe behind him. In his dying breath, the monk begs the sorceress, but she refuses before pulling the spear from his body. The knight tells his mother that Helena tainted him, but Circe says he was already tainted when he was born. Radu begs her to let him die, but she reveals that he's also immortal like her, so his body can never be destroyed. Instead, Circe invites him to join her so they can destroy Vladislas and his clan and keep the bloodstone as his prize. With nowhere to go, Radu accepts and becomes his mother's apprentice. Circe teaches him the black arts, elemental magic, and vampiric skills to stalk and hunt his prey. During these years, Radu remains haunted by visions of Helena and the bloodstone. One night, Circe catches Radu stealing her jewelry, so she banishes him. Alone again, Radu walks in the darkness and sleeps inside crypts. Soon, he yearns for company to spend his eternal nights with, so he follows the siblings Ash and Ariel. After the siblings perform in a tavern, Ash finds their earnings insufficient for a room in the inn. The tavern owner takes pity on them and offers them a place to sleep in a cellar. As Ariel settles down, she asks her brother if he noticed an ominous strange man in the crowd. Ash just says that all the villagers were strange to him. In the middle of the night, Ariel senses someone by their door. She checks and sees a cloaked figure offering to teach them the mysterious arts. She rejects and closes the door, then wakes her brother to warn him about the demon she encountered. Skeptical, Ash heads out to find this demon. When he sees Radu, he immediately warns him that they're hired by King Carol to perform in the royal wedding. However, Radu introduces himself as a knight of the church who will escort them. Ariel doesn't buy his lie, saying the king's men will search for them if they go missing. Dropping his act, Radu then tempts them, claiming that their royal performance is small compared to what he'll teach them. He offers them immortal life, explaining that serving him will allow them to further their craft. Ariel admonishes his offer, but Ash agrees to it. Immediately, Radu bites the man's neck, and as he lay dying, the vampire tells Ariel that he'll bring her brother back if she also agrees to serve him. She still refuses and throws herself to her brother, only for Radu to bite her as well. As the two lay doomed, he asks them to choose between life or death. Ash begs Ariel to choose life, and with both of them on the brink, she agrees, allowing Radu to taint them with his blood. After some time, the siblings wake up in Vladislas' castle catacombs. Ash demands to be set free, but Radu tells them they'll only be freed when they lose their humanity and become avatars of music. Ariel renounces him, but the vampire tells that the craving for blood will soon overwhelm them and he's their only hope of survival. He then leaves them to consider their situation. After some time, the siblings struggle with their cravings. Radu suddenly returns with a woman, telling the two to feed before madness sets in. The siblings refuse, so the vampire bites the woman and lays her on their bed, urging them to drink her blood. Ash submits and bites the woman's wrist. The relief causes him to pass out while Radu urges his sister to do the same. Finally, Ariel satisfies herself and her new master praises her. Years go by and Radu's solitude is eased by the siblings. Yet the thought of Helena and the bloodstone still haunts him. Ariel becomes mad with bloodlust one night, so Radu asks them to play music to comfort them. He presents them with their instruments, but when the sister plays the flute, she creates a shrill that repels Radu. The vampire strangles Ariel for her defiance, but she tells him that she has no more joy in her soul. Ash agrees that they have no more inspiration to play, so he asks Radu to give them solace. With this in mind, the vampire waits until Ariel accepts him as a master instead. When this happens, he fulfills his role and teaches them the ways of the vampires. He leads them to their first hunt where they target a couple who are out at night. The siblings attack them together and Radu relishes in their success. He finds kinship with them and relishes in their first kill. Meanwhile, Diana, a knight of the dragon, infiltrates Radu's castle and finds one of their prey. She gives the woman her last rites and stabs her head with a vampire-slaying dagger. Just then, Radu and his fledglings return and confront Diana. She aims a crossbow at him, only for the vampire to quickly seize her by the neck. He admires her spirit and asks her bloodline, to which she answers that she came from the sorceress Callisto of ancient times. Radu tells her she's a stolen child like him, forced to serve the church. She then tries to stab Radu, but he overpowers and bites her. He commands the siblings to savor her blood, and after they do, he aims to taint Diana with his blood. However, during the sordid rite, the siblings grab the dagger and crossbow. Radu quickly grabs Ash, demanding the two to hand the relic. Instead, they renounce him and disappear. Betrayed, he looms over Diana, thinking of having her replace the siblings. Ultimately, he rejects her as a fledgling and disappears, leaving her to die. Radu searches for his fledglings for 3 centuries and eventually finds them in the middle of a hunt. He approaches them and demands his dagger back, but Ariel explains that they traded it to a vampire queen in exchange for sanctuary. To retrieve it, the siblings lead him down a tunnel which opens to an ornate room where the vampire queen, Elena, is feeding. The siblings present Radu, but his face has changed over the years, so Elena doesn't recognize him. The vampire demands his fledglings to be freed and to have the dagger returned. This finally allows Elena to recognize him, so she commands the siblings to give them privacy. Now alone with Elena, Radu asks what happened to Stefan. The woman explains that Vladislas turned him when he reached adulthood, so he's now roaming the new world as a man of science. He then asks about Vladislas, and Elena tells him how the darkness drove him mad, so she entombed him in the catacombs with Radu's sword, the sword of Laertes, stabbed to his heart. Finally, Radu asked about the bloodstone. She presents it and offers him a drink from it if he swears his loyalty to her. He tells her that he belonged to her the moment they met, so Helena lets him drink the blood of the saints from the bloodstone. Meanwhile, Ash feeds on the woman in Helena's library and offers her sister to partake. The sister, however, wants blood that reeks of fear. Elsewhere, Radu lays on Helena's floor, relishing the relief of being reunited with Helena. The woman approaches him and invites him to join her as equals to rule this land and own the bloodstone, but only if he gives her Ash. Radu playfully declines, saying Ash isn't worthy of her, but she demands it because of the fledgling's beauty. After some discussion, Helena calls the siblings and announces that Radu has given them to her. Appalled, Ariel points out that they're not property to be traded. Helena commands the vampire to silence Ariel and Radu obeys. She asks them if they can play music, but Ariel snarls that Radu defiled their instruments. Tired of the woman's defiance, she demands Radu to break her or be banished. The vampire promises to educate the defiant fledgling, so Helena instructs him to take her to her chambers to do so. Ariel guides Radu down the tunnels, but instead of going to her room, the vampire heads to the lower levels, despite her warnings that it's forbidden. As they head down, Ariel begs her master to save them from Helena. The master agrees, but tells her to be patient. Soon, they find the catacombs where Vladislas rests with a sword stabbed into his heart. With trembling hands, Radu pulls the blade out of his father's body. Vladislas roars back to life, only for Radu to declare that he's fulfilling his prophecy. With that, he stabs his father repeatedly with a holy blade until the vampire finally perishes. Meanwhile, Helena guides Ash to a room and presents him with a grand piano. He tells her that he's barren from inspiration, so the woman lets him drink from the bloodstone, allowing the glorious sensations to be his new muse. Ash whispers that he has a new muse and prepares to play, only to slam his fingers on the piano, creating a horrendous sound that makes Helena recoil. As Helena staggers back, she finds Radu and Ariel behind her and admonishes them for going to her quarters uninvited. The man asks if she feels any affection from him at all, but Helena berates his repulsive form and his disgusting bloodline. Finally hearing the truth, Radu seizes Helena and twists her neck. During the horrible event, Ash takes the bloodstone and leaves, asking his sister to follow. Ariel urges Radu to join them, but she sees Helena brandish the holy dagger. Just as she warns her master, the vampire queen curses Radu and stabs him. The fledgling pulls Radu off and guides him outside. Concerned, Ariel asks if he's dying, but he answers that he's cursed to live forever. He then assures his fledgling that should she abandon him again, he won't chase them anymore because he's freeing them. Grateful that Radu saved them from Helena, she offers to be his consort. This gives the vampire joy, so he pledges himself to her. Their union is interrupted when Diana appears, telling him how she's been searching for him all over the world. Ariel attacks her but is shot by her crossbow. Radu flies to his dying consort and tells Diana that Ariel was his redemption. The hunter merely relishes in his agony and leaves him to suffer more. She then proceeds with her original task and heads to Helena's cave to purge it from the vampires. The vampire decides to leave Ariel's body to be destroyed by the sun. He knows that one day, Helena, his master and creator, will fulfill her curse and torment him.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.